Hello friends, and welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to share with you all a spring and summer book recommendations video, and I decided to do spring and summer together just because I find with summer book recommendations I have a bit of a harder time coming up with a list that really suits summer on its own. But now that I'm looking at this list, I think I definitely could have had a separate video for the summer season, but I decided to do spring and summer together. That way, if any of these books sound interesting or they're books that you've been wanting to read, you just haven't gotten around to it, there are several months in the Northern Hemisphere left of spring and summer, and I just am so excited to go over these books. A lot of them I haven't talked about in quite a while here on YouTube as well, so I'm really excited to talk about them again and just share these recommendations. And there are a lot. I believe I have over 30 books to get through, so I don't want to take too long on each book. I do also have the books split up into their respective genres, so you can jump around. There will be timestamps, and just grab yourselves something comforting, a cozy beverage, a snack, whatever makes you feel comfy and cozy. And I have my morning coffee. Today I am off of work. I am so grateful for that. It is a beautiful Thursday morning. It is sunny and it's supposed to be very, very warm today. So I'm just very, very excited for the spring season, the summer season. But without further ado, let's go over the books that I would recommend for spring and summer. Some of these books could definitely be enjoyed year-round, fall and winter as well, but to me, there's just something about each of these books that feels like they're perfect for spring and summer. There's just something about the story or the writing or the atmosphere, the ambience of the book that just feels perfect to read in the warmer months of the year. And this first book for historical fiction is The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow. And this book is about Mary Bennet. So it's her story from Pride and Prejudice. And Janice Hadlow did such a fantastic job of telling Mary's side of the story and kind of giving her a voice. She was very much the ugly duckling of the Bennet family, if you will. And this is just Janice Hadlow giving Mary Bennet a chance to tell her story. And part of the book is also set in the Lake District in England. And the writing and just everything about this book, it feels like a slightly more somber version of a Jane Austen story, but with such beautiful writing, and the descriptions of the Lake District in particular are beautiful. Although they don't happen until later in the book, I still think this book is perfect to read in a spring and summer, especially if you're a fan of Pride and Prejudice. I would highly recommend this one. I thought it was beautifully written and a beautiful, beautiful story from Mary Bennet's perspective. And on the topic of Jane Austen, I would also recommend Jane and the Year Without a Summer by Stephanie Barron. This is one of the later books in the Being a Jane Austen mystery series, but each book can definitely be read on their own. I have only read a few books out of the series. I've kind of dipped my toes into it, and this one was a really fun one. It is a mystery series in which Jane Austen herself is an amateur sleuth. In this one, Jane is just feeling a little unwell. She's not doing the greatest health-wise, and she had just finished and published Emma, and she is told by her doctor that she should go rest. So she goes to Cheltenham Spa in Gloucestershire with her sister Cassandra, and some things occur. And it says, Cheltenham Spa hardly turns out to be the relaxing sojourn Jane and Cassandra envisaged. It is immediately obvious that other boarders at this guest house where the Mrs. Austen are staying have come to Cheltenham with stresses of their own, some of them deadly. But perhaps with Jane's interference, a terrible crime might be prevented. And it is set during the year without a summer in which Mount Tambora in the South Pacific caused a volcanic winter that shrouded the entire planet for 16 months. So although it may not be the warmest summer that they experience, I just think this book is really fun to read around this time of year. And summer is in the title as well. So I think this is really fun to read around the warmer months of the year. And it's so fun having Jane Austen, an amateur detective. It is a lot of fun. So would definitely recommend this one. I also have to recommend the Emma M. Lyon series by Beth Brower. And this series is one of a kind. It is so unique and I've never read anything quite like it, but I am just falling in love with this series so much. I've read the first 3 volumes now and I'm very excited to continue with volume 4, hopefully in the next month or so, hopefully in May. That is my goal. But Emma M. Lyon, like I said, is one of a kind. It is a series set in the late Victorian era in London, but London with a twist. We have, I guess you would say, fantastical, magical elements, although it's not outright fantasy. It is definitely historical fiction, but Emma M. Lyon tells her story through journal entries. So the entire series is all her journal entries. It is epistolary and I love that so much. And it says, the year is 1883 and Emma M. Lyon has returned to her London neighborhood of St. Crispian's. But Emma's plans for a charmed and studious life are sabotaged by her eccentric cousin Archibald, her formidable Aunt Eugenia, and the slightly odd denizens of St. Crispian's. Emma M. Lyon offers up her unselected journals, however self-incriminating they may be, which comprise a series of novella-length volumes. So it's really just her day-to-day, the things that she gets up to, and I have to say, it's not often that I laugh out loud reading anything, and this series has made me laugh out loud multiple times, but there's also a touch of depth as well, and I feel like as you get through the series, it becomes deeper, and she's dealing with some grief, and I just can't get enough. I can't get enough of Emma M. Lyon, and this first volume, it does start in early March, so Volume 1 of the series goes through March and April, and then Volume 2 picks up, I believe, in early May. And so the first 3 go throughout the spring and summer, and it's just the perfect series to read this time of year. I love it so much, and I think anyone who loves historical fiction should try the series. The first volume isn't the best. I would definitely say Volume 3 is really where it's a gem. Volume 3 is a gem, but such a great series. Love it so much. I would also recommend The Innkeeper of Ivy Hill by Julie Klassen. And Julie Klassen is an author that I've really been enjoying. She's not an all-time favorite author, but this series, this trilogy, this is the first book in the trilogy, is one of my favorites by her. And it is one of the coziest, most heartwarming series I've ever read. It's less about romance and a fast-moving plot and all of that. It's really a slice of life, day-to-day, small English village goings-on, and it has such a wonderful cast of characters, and I love it so much. And I love the little blurb that says, "Welcome to the English village of Ivy Hill, where friendships thrive, romance blossoms, and mysteries await." And I would say in the first book, it's not so much about the romance. That really comes to the forefront in books 2 and 3. But in this one, we are following a widow. Her husband had worked as an innkeeper and she has to kind of keep everything going after he passes away. She has a strained relationship with her mother-in-law, and so it's really about relationships in this story, but I loved it so much and would highly recommend this one. It's one of my favorites by Julie Klassen. Next up is a book that is also technically a classic, although I did put it in the historical fiction category, and that is Arabella by Georgette Hare. And this one was written, I believe, in the 50s, 1949, so very close to that. But this one is a wonderful, wonderful Regency era romance written by an author who is fast becoming a favorite author of mine. Georgette Hare is wonderful. She wrote so many books throughout, I believe, like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. She was very prolific in the 20th century and wrote mainly Regency era romances, some contemporary to her mysteries, and I believe some medieval romances as well, but Regency romance is what Georgette Hare was known for, and Arabella is one of my absolute favorites of hers. In this one, Arabella is the oldest daughter of a clergyman, and she's on her way to London to basically enter the London scene and try to find a husband to support her younger siblings. The carriage that she is in ends up breaking down, and she's rescued by this dashing gentleman, and he kind of helps launch her into high society. All the while, they may be developing feelings for each other along the way, and it is just silliness and fun and so well written, and every single moment of dialogue that Georgette Hare writes is just perfection. She is so witty, and I would say her humor is more on the nose and less tongue-in-cheek maybe than Jane Austen, but she's just wonderful. And what I really like about the signature collection editions is at the back of the book, they have a glossary where there are pages and pages of slang from the Regency era, a lot of words and phraseology that I just would not understand without the glossary. So that really made for a fun reading experience as well. But there's just something about Regency romances and really comedic Regency romances that feel spring and summer to me. And this one is perfect for this time of year. If you've never read Georgette Hare, I would highly recommend trying her out, especially if you love Jane Austen and Regency romances as well, especially Regency romances without a lot of the garbage that gets thrown into books nowadays. So Arabella would highly recommend. It is so, so great. I'm going to try to be more brief with the rest of the books as I still have a lot to get through, but next up is To Whisper Her Name by Tamara Alexander. And this one is one of my favorite books of all time, and this is the perfect time of year to read it. It says, set at Nashville's historic Belmead Plantation, the most influential thoroughbred stud farm in America's history, To Whisper Her Name weaves the struggles of real people in the post-war South with the journeys of a man and woman scarred by betrayal. Tamara Alexander writes really, really great historical fiction set in this time frame on plantations. It's a really difficult time period to write any kind of story in, and it's even more difficult to write characters that own plantations, that run plantations. There are slaves, and it's just very difficult, but I think she does it with such grace. And the way that she tells her stories, there is nuance, but she's also crystal clear in the message that slavery is like truly abominable. And anyways, this is a romance though, and it is beautiful. It is not cheesy. As someone who is not the biggest fan of books that are mainly about the romance, and this one is definitely not mainly about the romance, but it is just wonderful. I highly recommend Tamara Alexander. She makes me feel like I'm right there with these characters, and this is just such a wonderful book. It is quite the chunker, and I've read it twice now, and it's still a favorite. Would highly recommend. Then we have Secrets of a Charmed Life by Susan Meissner. This is a World War II historical fiction and a really great one as well. And this one I would definitely recommend reading around this time of year, as it is partially set in the Cotswolds, and it is dual timeline, and it's not a favorite book of all time, but I do think it is really well written, and this is the perfect time of year to read it. And I love the opening paragraph. It says, the English cottage, bramble-hedged and golden-stoned, looks as timeless as a fairy tale, except for the bobbing mylar balloons tied to the front gate. Ivy scampers childlike across the house's walls, all the way to the gabled windows on the second story, and then is tamed to civil edges around the paned windows. Easter-hued hollyhocks stand in stately rows beneath the sills, and the main character, as she arrives to this cottage, says that she steps out of the vehicle and into the postcard charm of April in the Cotswolds. And that is the start of the modern day timeline, as like I was saying, it's dual timeline. But I just think this book is really great to read in the spring and summertime. And Susan Meissner is a wonderful storyteller. Would highly recommend. Next up is The Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys. This is my favorite book by this author currently. It is just wonderful, and I don't talk about it enough, but I love this book so much. And this one is set in Spain in the 50s, and I know next to nothing about Spanish politics or, you know, the history of Spain, anything like that, but I really didn't realize how much Spain struggled under a fascist dictatorship after World War II. And our main characters in this one, we have Daniel, who is an American. He's from a very wealthy family, and they end up traveling to basically vacation in Spain, not realizing what the political situation really is. And he meets a local Spanish young girl, and things get crazy, but it is just such a wonderful book. With it being set in Spain, it just feels like a really great summer read, and I just love it so much and needed to talk about it and needed to recommend it. So that is The Fountains of Silence. Then we have a Christian fiction historical dual timeline story, and that is The Premonition at Wither's Farm by Jamie Jo Wright. This is currently my favorite by this author as well, and oh my goodness, I loved this book. It is set in late summer, and I just think it's great to read in like August, September. And it is basically dealing with themes of superstition versus faith. We have characters who practice more like spiritual, I guess, seance-like things, and they are really challenged. Their faith system is really challenged. And there seems to be a killer on the loose as well in the historical timeline. It is just wild. This book is wild. The writing is beautiful. There are creepy elements, but it's just a perfect summer read in my opinion, and I think this is one of Jamie Jo's best works. I highly recommend it. I do have 3 biblical fiction stories that I also wanted to recommend, as I don't talk about biblical fiction nearly enough, and it is one of my favorite subgenres or genres. I feel like it's its own category within historical fiction. But I would highly recommend Tessa Afshar's Jewel of the Nile. And of course, it's set in Africa. The ancient kingdom of Kush is the setting. And in this one, our main character is a Kushite girl, and she gets kind of embroiled in some political intrigue. She learns that her father, who she thought was dead, may still be alive. And she ends up on this journey going from Africa to Rome. And it is just wild, a wild story. It is so well written. It is set around the time of the early church. I believe events in this book correspond with events that occur in the book of Acts in the Bible. And it is just so well written. Such a beautiful story. I love Tessa Afshar so much, and this is a great summer read as well, especially with the setting. So would highly recommend. And I would also recommend Potiphar's Wife by Misu Andrews, which is the first book in a duology, the second book being In Feast or Famine. And the second book is one of my favorite books ever, especially by Misu Andrews. She is my favorite biblical fiction author, hands down. She is wonderful. There's not much I need to say about these books, but they are set in ancient Egypt around the time of Joseph, and this one's about Potiphar's wife. She is the main character. And then this book is about Joseph's Egyptian wife, Asenath, and these books are wonderful. This author can set the scene and write biblical fiction like no one else. She is wonderful. I love her work so much, and summertime is the perfect time to read these books, especially with them being set in ancient Egypt. It is just wonderful. Love her so much. Had to talk about these. The next category of books I have to share are all classics, and I had such a hard time not making this list 5 times as long as it is, but I have several books, I believe 13 books that I wanted to share that are classics, that are perfect for spring and summer. And the first 2 books I'm actually currently reading, so I haven't finished them yet, but I do think they are perfect for this time of year. The first one being Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is such a wonderful book, and I am almost halfway through, and I'm adoring this book so much. I'm buddy reading it with my friend Madeline from Cozy Cottage Chapters, and we're both just loving it. And this one, out of all the books I've read by Elizabeth Gaskell, this one feels the most joyful. I don't know how to describe it, but it is just a cozy cup of tea of a book. And oh my goodness, I love the main character, Molly Gibson, and just everything about this book is perfect for spring and summer. And I wanted to read a very short little passage here. It is from chapter 2, and young Molly, when she is 12, she is visiting this big manor house, and she's just taking in the beauty around her. And it says, she lost all consciousness of herself by and by when the party strolled out into the beautiful grounds, the like of which she had never even imagined. Green velvet lawns, bathed in sunshine, stretched away on every side into the finely wooded park. If there were divisions and ha-has between the soft, sunny sweeps of grass and the dark gloom of the forest trees beyond, Molly did not see them, and the melting away of exquisite cultivation into the wilderness had an inexplicable charm to her. Near the house there were walls and fences, but they were covered with climbing roses and bare honeysuckles and other creepers just bursting into bloom. There were flower beds too, scarlet, crimson, blue, orange, masses of blossom lying on the greensward. And then later it says, she felt better in fresh air, and unobserved and at liberty, went from one lovely spot to another, now in the open park, now in some shut-in flower garden, where the song of the birds and the drip of the central fountain were the only sounds, and the treetops made an enclosing circle in the blue June sky. She went along without more thought as to her whereabouts than a butterfly has, as it skims from flower to flower, till at length she grew very weary. And that is just one passage out of several that just made me fall in love with this book even more, and I just love it so much. And I think this is the perfect time of year to read this book. I'm so glad that I'm reading it now. And there were passages as well set around Easter, and I read those passages during Easter weekend, so it was just serendipitous and perfect, and I loved it. And I'm loving every minute of this book so much. And the other book that I'm currently reading, and I think is just perfect for this time of year, is Jane of Lantern Hill by L.M. Montgomery. This is my first time reading this book, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to read this L.M. Montgomery. I have fallen in love. I love this book so much. I just love the character of Jane and just the way that she has fallen in love with Prince Edward Island. Everything about this book is just beautiful. And spring and summer is the time to read this book. I love this passage here. It says, Jane did not know she was looking out on the loveliest thing on earth, a June morning in Prince Edward Island, but she knew it all seemed like a different world from last night. A wave of fragrance broke in her face from the lilac hedge between Aunt Irene's house and the next one. The poplars in a corner of the lawn were shaking in green laughter. An apple tree stretched out friendly arms. There was a faraway view of daisy-sprinkled fields across the harbor where white gulls were soaring and swooping. The air was moist and sweet after the rain. Aunt Irene's house was on the fringe of the town, and a country road ran behind it, a road almost blood-red in its glistening wetness. Jane had never imagined a road colored like that. And this description of Jane's garden. Jane had already decided that there was never a garden in the world like hers. She was crazy about it. An early, old-fashioned yellow rosebush was already in bloom. Shadows of poppies danced here and there. The stone dike was smothered in wild rose bushes starred with crimson bud sheaths. Pale lemon lilies and creamy June lilies grew in the corners. There were ribbon grass and mint, bleeding heart, prince's feather, southernwood, peonies, sweet balm, sweet May, sweet William, all with sated velvet bees humming over them. This book is just beautiful. I adore it, and I will talk more about it in my wrap-up once I finished it, but I'm loving it so much. Speaking of L.M. Montgomery, I have to recommend Anne of Green Gables. It is an all-seasons book. You can read it any time of year, and it is perfection. But at the same time, I always feel like this book is meant to be read in the springtime, just for me personally, but Anne of Green Gables is one of the most beautiful books ever written. I'm obsessed. But besides Anne of Green Gables, L.M. Montgomery also wrote one of my favorite books of all time, The Blue Castle. This book is just beautiful. Our main character, she is basically just done with her life, and her family is very overbearing. She receives some startling information from her doctor regarding her heart health, and she kind of decides to, live her life as she dreams, and she ends up falling in love, moving to Muskoka, and it just feels very spring and summer to me, the Muskoka setting. It is only a few hours away from where I live, and it just feels very familiar, and I don't know, L.M. Montgomery in general is just spring and summer to me. So The Blue Castle, one of my favorite books of all time, would highly recommend it this time of year, and this edition is also absolutely beautiful. It is from the Literary Book Club, and I am obsessed, but this book is just perfect for this time of year. Next up is a book that I don't hear talked about often enough. It is such a beautiful story, and that is Deerbrook by Harriet Martineau. And this book is considered one of the first English novels of domestic life and just cozy English village life. And it is a book that also inspired Charlotte Bronte and Elizabeth Gaskell in their works. And Harriet Martineau wrote this in the 1830s, so one of the earliest Victorian novels as well. And it's about these two sisters, Hester and Margaret, who end up coming to this village of Deerbrook to live with some cousins. And they end up meeting several people within the village. There are some possible suitors, and it's really just about the day-to-day slice of life, things happening in an English village, but there are also some deeper things going on beneath the surface. And this book also deals with some really interesting themes surrounding mob mentality when it comes to politics, and there's a lot of village gossip, and it is just such a wonderful story. And I especially loved the two sisters. And there's one scene in the book that has just been imprinted on my mind, and it is when the young cousins that the girls live with set up this tea party for the adults, and they make tea out of some sort of plant that does not taste great, and the adults just kind of pretend to enjoy it. And it is just the sweetest, coziest of books. I loved it so much. I love the two sisters as well. And I've already mentioned this multiple times, but sister relationships in books is something that I have come to just adore. I love when authors explore sister relationships. It is something that I just can't get enough of. And that aspect reminded me a little bit of Sense and Sensibility, and I just loved this book so much and had to recommend it. Speaking of Sense and Sensibility, I would definitely recommend reading Sense and Sensibility this time of year. I would recommend all of Austen's works in spring and summer. Emma as well, I would recommend in the summertime. I don't know what it is about these two books that just feel spring and summery to me. Yes, Pride and Prejudice as well. Northanger Abbey and Persuasion feel more appropriate to read in the fall time, but I don't know. These two books just feel the most floral and just all the spring vibes, for me at least. If you have yet to read these two books by Austen, let this be the time of year that you do read them. They are perfection. And Jane Austen July is also coming very, very soon in July, and I'm very excited for that readathon, so would highly recommend these two. They are perfect for this time of year. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna quickly go through the last few classics here, and I believe they are all modern classics, and a few of them have to do with traveling and the coast and the ocean and that sort of thing. The next book here is The Feast by Margaret Kennedy. It is set in Cornwall in the summer of 1947, and this book was one of the most unique and slightly odd books I've ever read, but it's one that has stuck with me, and I find myself thinking about it now and again, and it's one that I would definitely reread. It is a book where we know that this tragedy occurs. This cliff collapses, completely burying a hotel and most of the hotel guests and employees. But then we're following all of these characters in the week leading up to that tragedy. And it's really a character study. And I like how it says here, over the week before the landslide, we meet the hotel guests in all their eccentric glory. The selfish aristocrat, slothful hotelier, snooping housekeeper, bereaved couple, bohemian authoress, and poverty-stricken children. And as friendships form and romances blossom, sins are revealed and the cliff cracks widen. Both a glorious portrait of seaside holidays in post-war Britain and a wise, witty fable, Margaret Kennedy's The Feast is a banquet indeed. I would highly recommend reading this book in the summertime, and I just love the beautiful illustration. It's a full front and back cover illustration. I don't know how well you can see that, but just of the Cornwall, Cornish coast there. I love it so much. Such a weird book, but I really, really enjoyed it and would highly recommend reading in the summertime. A less tragic book, but another one in which characters in England go on vacation is The Fortnight in September. And it's one of those books where it feels like nothing really happens, but like The Feast, it is really about the characters. And we have the Stevens family who every year they go on vacation to this place, and I forget what it's called. So it's called Bognor Regis, and they go every single year since the parents got married and they went there for their honeymoon. They've been going every year, and now with their children. It says, the family savors every moment of their holiday, keenly aware that things may not be the same next year. Delightfully nostalgic, The Fortnight in September is an extraordinary novel about ordinary people enjoying simple pleasures. And that's really what it is. And it's also really interesting to follow the Stevens family as they are kind of a lower middle class family. And this book was written in 1931, so I believe it would have been set in the 20s. And it is just such a great story. So different. Not a story that I thought I would absolutely love. And while I didn't absolutely fall in love with it, it is one that I do want to reread. And I think it's just a perfect read to take your time with, just enjoy the family vacation alongside the family. It is beautiful and a perfect summer read. Even though it is set in September and a lot of people have already entered the fall season, myself included, September does still very much look like summer, even where I live. So this is just a great beach read, a great book to read in the warm months. And then we have The Moonspinners by Mary Stewart. And this is the only Mary Stewart book I have read up until now, but I plan on reading another of hers this summer. But this one, there's just a very short summary. It says, while on a walking holiday through the beautiful deserted hills of Crete, Nicola Ferris stumbles across a critically injured Englishman guarded by a fierce Greek. Nicola cannot abandon them and so sets off on a perilous search for their lost companion, all the while being pursued by someone who wants to make sure none of them leave the island. This book is such a great summer read as well. You feel the heat, you feel the warmth of, the Mediterranean, and the nature descriptions in this book are also beautiful. And you feel what the main character feels like. She feels like she's being watched and followed, and it is just such a great summer read. A really great romantic thriller, such a good modern classic, would highly recommend. I would also recommend The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. And even though this book was not an all-time favorite of mine when I read it, I do want to reread it and then listen to the Literary Life podcast. They did some episodes on this book, and I do think I'll get a lot more out of the book once I've listened to their episodes on it. But even so, I do think the writing is absolutely beautiful. And there's a quote here on the back. It says, all the radiance of April in Italy lay gathered together at her feet. The sun poured in on her. The sea lay asleep in it, hardly stirring. Across the bay, the lovely mountains, exquisitely different in color, were asleep too in the light. And underneath her window, at the bottom of the flower-starred grass slope from which the wall of castle rose up, was a great cypress, cutting through the delicate blues and violets and rose colors of the mountains and the sea like a great black sword. She stared, such beauty, and she there to see it, such beauty, and she alive to feel it. Her face was bathed in light. This one is about 4 different women who come together on vacation in Italy, and they're all dealing with their own things, and it's kind of their growth and development throughout the story with beautiful nature writing and descriptions of Italy, and I had to recommend this one as well. And the last book for classics is All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. This book is just wonderful. I adored this so much. It is basically James Herriot's memoirs of his time as a vet in the Yorkshire Dales and Moors. And this starts off with James Herriot being a young new vet. He is fresh out of college and starts working, but he's up against quite a few challenges, and it is just so fun to follow. And it is perfect to read in the spring and summer as well. I love seeing how he cares for the animals and just everything about his memoirs. It's just perfection. Would highly recommend to read in the spring or summer. It's just beautiful. Next up, we have some mysteries that I wanted to recommend, and a couple of them are Agatha Christie mysteries. And the first one is Death on the Nile, and it goes without saying, this is a perfect summer read. It is set on a Nile cruise and a murder occurs, and it's Agatha Christie, and she's fun to read year round, but with the heat in this setting, I think summertime is perfect to read that book in. And then we also have Dumb Witness, which I recently read. I read this in March and had so much fun with it. And this one, I don't think Agatha Christie is a cozy mystery writer at all. She did not write cozy mysteries. There's a tone of cynicism in her books, but this one I felt was a little more on the cozy side and could definitely be enjoyed in the spring season. It has a dog as well named Bob, who is given a voice in the story, and I just loved this one. I loved my time reading it. It is so much fun. This one does start in April and does continue throughout early summer as well, so it is a great time of year to read it. So I would definitely recommend these 2 Agatha Christie's. I would also recommend Mrs. Pollifax, the entire series, but this first book is The Unexpected Mrs. Pollifax by Dorothy Gilman. And they're less mysteries, more thrillers, but they're kind of cozy spy thrillers. They are so much fun. Not at all the type of books that I would reach for, but there's just this levity to the books and humor that makes them so fun. And this one is set partly in Mexico and then partly in Europe, and it is with the backdrop of the Cold War. And Mrs. Pollifax is just this woman in her 60s doing her retirement thing, and she ends up somehow asked to work as a CIA courier, and gets involved in some crazy things. I just love this. It says, in search of adventure, she decides to offer her services to the CIA, who, after all, would spot a suburban grandmother as a Cold War secret agent, an adventure she finds. Armed with only an open mind and a little ingenuity, Mrs. Pollifax is the most unlikely and lovable of international spies. If you need a light, fun, easy breezy, quick type of story, look no further than Mrs. Pollifax. She is something else. I'm loving this series so much. These books are not meant to be taken seriously, but would highly recommend. And the first several books are all set in warmer climates from what I remember, so would definitely recommend reading these in the spring and summer. Next up, we have a series that I wanted to recommend with this first book, A Quiet Life in the Country by T.E. Kinsey. The series is a Lady Hardcastle mystery series. And this one is, I mean, look at that cover. Like, this screams spring and summer, and it is set in a cozy English town. It is perfect for this time of year. Lady Hardcastle and her maid Florence, or Flo, have just moved into this English country house, and they are just trying to enjoy some peace and quiet, but crimes occur and they get involved with solving them, and it is so much fun. The humor in this series is top tier. It is just so tongue-in-cheek, and I love the characters of Lady Hardcastle and Flo so much. This series is perfect, so perfect for spring and summer as well. I had to recommend. And last but not least for mysteries, we have Crocodile on the Sandbank by Elizabeth Peters, which is the first book in the Amelia Peabody mystery series. And it's a mystery series I've been very slowly making my way through. I haven't talked about it nearly enough, but am very much enjoying my time. And I think I've read the first 6 books probably. But this one I would say is perfect for summertime, as the majority of the books are set in Egypt. And our main character, Amelia, in this book, we are introduced to her when she is a single woman, and she is an archaeologist, Egyptologist. She is a very driven and independent woman in the late Victorian era. It says, emancipated and forthright, Amelia Peabody, an indomitable product of the Victorian era, embarks on her first Egyptian adventure armed with unshakable self-confidence, a journal to record her thoughts, and a sturdy parasol. On her way there, she rescues young Evelyn Barton Forbes, who has been ruined and abandoned on the streets of Rome by her callous lover, and takes her to Cairo as her companion. From there, the two women sail up the Nile into their biggest ever adventure. Arriving at an archaeological site run by the Emerson brothers, the dashing Emerson and amiable Walter, Amelia discovers that their little party is increased by one, an ancient Egyptian mummy that proves to be an alarming and decidedly lively example of the species. The series is just so much fun, and I love spending time with Amelia and Emerson. There are always moments that make me smile and laugh, and it is just so much fun, and I would highly recommend in the warmer months. I do have a few fantasy novels to go through as well, and fantasy is a genre I read much less of, but these are a few novels that I really enjoyed when I read them and would really recommend reading them in the spring and summertime. None of them really feel fall or wintry to me at all, so I think these are great to read in spring and summer. And I first wanted to recommend The Soul Mark by J.J. Fisher. And the second book in this duology is called Carver of Souls. It is the Soul Mark duology, and I could not believe how much I loved this duology. It is not at all the type of story that I really gravitate towards or find myself itching to read, but there was just something about the first book. I started reading it on Kindle. I could not stop. I just was so obsessed with what was going on with the story, and then I ended up buying physical copies because I just loved the first book so much. And then I quickly read the second book after. I devoured this duology and just found them to be so impactful. They are allegorical of the Christian faith, but I wouldn't say you have to be religious to enjoy these novels at all. But oh my goodness, did I love them. I will just read the summary of the first book just because I struggle to really describe what the book is about, but it says, after being sentenced to death for the accidental killing of a wealthy, well-connected man, Selah Merriweather is offered another option, to be stripped of her soul and sentenced to lifetime exile on Azazel, the vast prison island. There, alongside dangerous criminals like herself, firstborn children of the old town chosen by the lot are sent to atone for the sins of their families. As one of the elected righteous, Caleb Alexander's path to widespread renown is guaranteed so long as he can endure a year as an overseer on Azazel, preventing the other guards from fraternizing with the prisoners. But as he finds himself drawn to Selah, Caleb wrestles with the implications of his new role and the laws forbidding contact between jailer and prisoner. Could a woman like Selah truly be soulless? When Caleb tries to resist his growing attraction, Selah struggles with the weight of her sins and the past she has kept from Caleb. But when mutiny against the old town brews on Azazel, Selah and Caleb must work together to stay alive and to uncover the truth behind the very powers that created Azazel in the first place. I loved this duology. I would say it is adult fantasy, but with a writing style that felt maybe a little more YA. I still loved it so much, even though I am not generally drawn to fantasy. This series dealt with some really difficult topics as well. There are trigger warnings for things like sexual assault and murder, prostitution, that sort of thing. It does not shy away from really difficult topics, but I would say reading these in the summer would be the perfect time to read them because they are set in a world that feels really tropical, and we spend some time sailing on the high seas and we kind of get some pirate vibes, and it's just so well written. So perfect for summertime. I needed to talk about this duology, would highly recommend if it sounds interesting to you. I loved it so much, and I need to read more by this author. I just could not get enough of these. Another book I wanted to recommend that I don't own a copy of, but really enjoyed and would definitely recommend to read in the springtime. It is called Ariadre and the Legend of the Fire Rose, and it is written by Christy A. Cole, and she's actually here on BookTube. She is a Christian booktuber, and this is her debut novel, and it was so well written and just such a wonderful story. And if you love YA fantasy and really lush descriptions of flowers and gardens and forests and all of that, this is the perfect read for you. It is just so beautiful. I'll read the summary for this one as well, but it says, Ariadre never expected that the last thing her mother would ever say to her would lead her to a mysterious manor in the middle of the woods. Desperate and alone, she finds herself at the mercy of the people that live there. She quickly learns that it is not just any manor, it's a school for girls that teaches weaponry. With nowhere else to go, Ariadre decides to enroll in the school. But as time goes on, a darkness creeps in from the forest. People are disappearing without a trace. Vicious animal packs are growing, and strange markings are appearing on the trees. As Ariadre tries to figure out why these things are happening, she discovers that the manor is hiding something, a legendary rose of fire, and when she finds it just days after her 16th birthday, she's surprised when its flames don't burn her. Instead, the rose leaves her forever changed and with more questions than answers. Can Ariadre unravel the secrets of the manor and find the source of the darkness? And can she unlock the power of the fire rose and save her friends before it is too late? I thoroughly enjoyed this book and would highly recommend it for the spring season. I have 3 more books to recommend, and they're all more on the middle grade side. And this next one is Grounded, The Adventures of Rapunzel, the first book in the Time series by Megan Morrison. I remember absolutely loving this book. It is a fairy tale retelling of Rapunzel with, I believe, a dash of Jack and the Beanstalk, and I loved it. I loved this entire series, and I need to reread it at some point. It was just so much fun. I have said that I gravitate more towards like fairy tale type stories in the winter, but with this series, it is just full of humor and the plot moves very quickly and the character development is just on point, and there are so many funny moments with the characters. It's just lighthearted and so fun to read this time of year, the spring and summer. This first book is just perfection. I also really enjoyed the second book, Disenchanted, The Trials of Cinderella, one of my absolute favorite fairy tale retellings of all time. And I love Cinderella as well, so I really enjoyed that. The third book I also really enjoyed. It was my least favorite of the 3, but still such a great story. That was Transformed, The Perils of the Frog Prince. But the first 2 books in particular, fantastic. Grounded and Disenchanted. So much fun and would highly recommend. I also wanted to recommend The Beatrice Prophecy by Kate DiCamillo, illustrated by Sophie Blackall. This book captured my heart. Oh my goodness. We have this young girl named Beatrice who just shows up in this monastery, and she is basically on the run from a king who has been trying to get rid of her because of this prophecy. She ends up on this journey with this goat named Answelica and this monk named Brother Edic, and everything about this book is just precious. It is a perfect, cozy springtime read as well. And the illustrations are absolutely beautiful. First of all, that cover, and there's the back. Oh my goodness, I love it so much. Here's just one of the illustrations from the book. It is truly such a beautiful story, and I think that this is the perfect time of year to read it. There's Beatrice with Answelica. Oh my goodness. I love this book so much. Such a great middle grade, one of my favorites of all time. I also wanted to recommend The Two Princesses of Bamar by Gail Carson Levine, and I haven't read this book in so long. It's another one I need to reread, but I loved this book so much. It is about sisters, and I love stories about sisters. I've said it so many times. It says, when plague strikes Bamar, Princess Addie must fulfill an ancient prophecy. Brave and adventurous, Princess Meryl dreams of fighting dragons and protecting the kingdom of Bamar. Shy and fearful, Princess Addie is content to stay within the safety of the castle walls. The one thing that the sisters share is their unwavering love for each other. The tables are turned, however, when the Grey Death leaves Meryl fatally ill. To save her sister, meek Princess Addie must find the courage to set out on a dangerous quest filled with dragons, unknown magic, and death itself. Time is running out, and the sisters' lives and the future of the kingdom of Bamar hang in the balance. I remember just devouring this book. It is a bit of an adventure story, and one of the girls spends some time in a forest, and it is just perfect for this time of year as well. And I love the sister relationship so much, would highly recommend. And last but not least, the last book on this very long list is The Goose Girl by Shannon Hale. This is the first book in the Books of Bayern series, and I would of course recommend the entire series. And in this one, we have Anadori Caladra Taliana Isili, Crown Princess of Kilendry. She was born with her eyes closed and a word on her tongue. She spent the early years of her life listening to her aunt's stories and learning the language of the swans. Then a colt was born with a word on his tongue, his name, Falada. And when Annie spoke it, she found the key to his language too. But as Annie's gift grew, so did others' mistrust of it, and soon her mother felt she had no choice but to send her away to be queen of a foreign land. It is a retelling of the traditional Goose Girl fairy tale, and it is just beautiful. I love every moment spent with the animals in the story as well, especially Falada, the horse. He was precious. And our main character, Annie, she spends some time in stables, and we get some beautiful nature descriptions as well. And it is just such a perfect book to read in the spring and summer. I've already read this twice, but I want to read it a third time. It is just so beautiful, and I love this book. I love this series and would highly, highly recommend. All right, so that is my very, very long list of books that I would recommend to read in the spring and summer. And I do want to also share at some point, probably next week, a video with my list of books that I would like to read at some point this spring or summer. It's a pile of possibilities more so, but I also have a lot of books on that list, so I do really enjoy making very long lists of books, and I just wanted to share this very long list of recommendations because I love talking about books, and a lot of these I haven't talked about in quite a while and needed a reason to. I think they're all great to read from April to September. These books are all wonderful, and I would definitely recommend you checking them out. But friends, that is it for this recommendations video. I am so grateful to each of you for watching this video. I truly appreciate you all, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.